I've spent millions of dollars just to receive a face that even my own children cannot look at. That is the bitter confession of a once glamorous movie star who had stood at the pinnacle of fame. For decades, they were America's sweethearts, the rugged heartthrobs who defined every beauty standard. But behind that radiant glow was a frantic battle against the rule of time. Now what is laid bare before the public are smiles frozen in chemical wax and facial muscles permanently distorted. Even more terrifying, there are emaciated, frail bodies drained of life force by nights of debauchery stimulants and the suffocating weight of lawsuits. What has turned these beauty icons into haunting versions of themselves? Who is the victim of the pressure of plastic surgery, and who has lost themselves amid the twists and turns of life? Let's rewind time and open the files of 12 fallen icons who succumbed to the Hollywood fame machine. 1. Meg Ryan, the queen of romantic comedies and the cruel betrayal of chemicals. In May 2023, after being completely absent for half a year, Meg Ryan suddenly appeared in New York for the premiere of her friend Michael J. Fox's documentary. But instead of cheers welcoming the return of a legend, social media exploded with a terrifying question. Is this really Meg Ryan? What happened to her face? The shock is entirely justified. Let's rewind back to the 90s when the world didn't just call Meg a movie star. They revered her as Hollywood's queen of romantic comedies. In Sleepless in Seattle or You've Got Mail, Meg didn't need sizzling curves. She conquered the world with her messy blonde hair, large expressive eyes, and a radiant smile that lit up the entire frame. But in the film Capital, the title Girl Next Door was in reality a time-limited sentence. The fame machine demanded Meg Ryan to remain young forever. When wrinkles began to appear, the pressure from the public's scrutinizing gaze and the fear of being replaced by young beauties pushed the starlet to the wall. The obsession with aging suffocated her mind, and Meg clung to chemical injections like a desperate lifeline. What did she do to that million-dollar look? Famous cosmetic surgeon Mark Youssef revealed a harsh truth. Meg went to extremes, getting fat grafts and injecting fillers into her cheekbones. She longed for her youthful, plump cheeks again, but the massive amount of chemicals created an unnaturally swollen mass. Ironically, whenever she tried to smile, all the filler would shift upward, squeezing her once beautiful eyes, her sharpest weapon as an actress, into an awkward squint. The struggle to retain youth became even more tragic when cosmetic surgery backfired completely. Efforts to maintain softness and elegance only made her features appear harsh and masculine in the most startling way. Her nose was narrowed to a sharp point, her lips became swollen, and her forehead was locked by Botox. Meg Ryan wanted to use chemicals to freeze time, but it ironically froze her career as well. The harshest truth is directors didn't turn away from Meg because she was aging. They stopped giving her roles because her face lost the ability to express emotions. How can an actress convey intense inner conflict when the facial muscles are almost paralyzed? Although Meg had once boldly stated, "I love my age," and repeatedly denied any plastic surgery, the stiff muscles didn't lie. Her desperate attempt to cling to youth ultimately became the fatal blow that robbed her of her artistic soul, turning her into a stranger right before the camera's lens. 2. Mickey Rourke, the heartthrob who destroyed his million-dollar face. In the entertainment world, possessing a million-dollar face is the golden ticket to becoming a legend. But Mickey Rourke made one of the most unbelievable turns in history. He walked away from fame to pursue a passion for boxing, only to end up with a face that people feared to look at. In the 80s, Mickey was an irreplaceable heartthrob. In the classic 9.5 Weeks, he captivated the public with his mysterious, reckless aura. His signature grimace and intense gaze made him the dream lover of millions, elevating him to A-list star status. But at the peak of his fame, in 1991, Mickey shocked the world by announcing his retirement from acting to become a professional boxer at the age of 39. His desire to prove himself came at a significant cost. After 8 bouts, though he remained unbeaten, his appearance suffered severe damage. The repeated blows to the face resulted in significant structural changes, with his nose badly affected and his cheekbones losing their youthful sharpness. The real tragedy began when he frantically sought to fix those marks through plastic surgery. In 2009, he bitterly confessed to Daily Mail, "I picked the wrong doctor to fix my face." To reshape his nose, doctors performed 5 surgeries, even using part of his ear cartilage to help reconstruct his nose. These repeated surgeries over his old injuries not only failed to help him regain his appearance, but instead made his face appear stiff and unfamiliar. The pressure to maintain his image was so intense that his ex-wife revealed that Mickey secretly underwent facial surgeries, but lied to his family about the reasons behind them. Now in his 70s, the once iconic heartthrob has been forever buried behind layers of chemical masks. Recent photos on outlets like Page 6 only show a stiff face hidden behind dark sunglasses. Mickey Rourke is the clearest example of a paradox. Sometimes beauty doesn't fade because of age, but because of impulsive choices and wrong turns made in desperation. 3. Goldie Hawn, the legendary smile, sacrificed for the nightmare of surgery. In 1969, 24-year-old Goldie Hawn ascended the stage to receive her Oscar with a radiant smile that lit up the entire room. More than half a century later, that smile has become the focus of sorrow on news pages, completely frozen under layers of taut skin and swollen cheeks. The downward journey of a beauty icon actually began with a deeply ingrained obsession. In the 80s and 90s, Goldie didn't dominate the screen with fiery beauty. Her ultimate weapon was vitality. Every wrinkle at the corner of her eyes when she laughed radiated a genuine life force, making her America's inseparable muse. But Hollywood's fame machine doesn't tolerate natural aging in women. The psychological turning point came in 1996 when she turned 51. In the iconic The First Wives Club, her character bitterly exclaimed, "In Hollywood, there are only 3 ages for women: the hot young girls, the middle-aged attorneys, and the old toothless women." That cinematic line was actually Goldie's desperate sigh in response to the brutal rules of ageism. Fearing the flashbulbs would soon pass her by, she decided to gamble with surgery. According to renowned aesthetic surgeon Dr. Julian De Silva, the immense pressure to maintain her youthful image pushed the star into multiple facelift surgeries with unrealistic expectations. Not only that, her overuse of fillers in an attempt to reclaim her youthful appearance caused severe distortions to her facial structure. The height of the tragedy was exposed in recent paparazzi shots. Websites like Radar Online and Nicki Swift shocked readers with their coverage of the iconic star's appearance. Under the harsh scrutiny, the reality was bitter. Her skin had been stretched too tightly, losing all elasticity. The artificially swollen cheekbones pressed in, causing her once vibrant eyes, the windows to the soul, to become narrow, upturned, and hollow. The most cruel irony is this: Goldie Hawn spent a fortune to preserve her vitality, but the surgical mistake stole her ability to express emotion. Now behind oversized sunglasses and a forced smile, fans can no longer find the muse she once was. Her desperate attempts to defy age ultimately didn't save her glow, but left behind regret over an icon who willingly lost the most valuable part of herself. 4. Sylvester Stallone's attempt to deny his imperfection. If you look at Sylvester Stallone's face on the red carpet, or in his family's recent reality television series, you will no longer see the fiery image of the Italian stallion Rocky Balboa charging into battle. Instead, what stands before the public now resembles a lifeless wax statue completely stripped of the rugged edge he once had. But behind that unnatural expression lies more than a simple attempt to hold on to youth. Everything began with a medical incident in 1946. In the delivery room, a medical procedure accidentally damaged the 7th cranial nerve of the infant Sylvester. The after effects left one corner of his mouth slightly drooping, one eyelid sagging, and his speech somewhat slurred. But Stallone refused to surrender. Through relentless training and his remarkable talent for writing, he turned that roughness into a billion-dollar asset. The blockbuster Rocky 1976 carved a towering monument of masculinity, where audiences fell in love with a hero who was imperfect yet resilient. But eventually, the pressure to maintain the crown of an action star began to backfire. As he entered middle age, the extreme weight cutting required for films like The Expendables drastically reduced the fat in his face. Without that natural cushion, the asymmetry caused by his old nerve injury became more visible and uncontrollable under the camera. Cornered with few options, Stallone turned to cosmetic intervention. In People magazine, he once openly defended his decision. Why not? People maintain their cars, so why shouldn't they repair their own bodies? At first, he only underwent facelift procedures to restore balance to his face, but in Hollywood, the cycle of enhancement rarely has an end point. The pressure to maintain the throne of the alpha male pushed him toward excess. Surgeon Michael Persky once analyzed the actor's mistake. Stallone underwent overly aggressive eyelid surgery and brow lifts. These techniques are meant to create elegance, but on a masculine face, they unintentionally erase its natural gravity. Combined with the overuse of fillers to erase wrinkles, his eyes were pulled upward, creating a permanently tense expression and weakening his ability to express emotion on screen. Throughout his youth, Stallone fought tirelessly for the world to respect a face that was not perfect. But once he had reached the peak of glory, his attempt to fight time erased that very ruggedness. The unstoppable Italian stallion once defeated fate. Yet in the end, he imprisoned his own emotions within a face that felt strangely unfamiliar. 5. Nick Nolte, the title of sexiest man, alive burned away by drugs. In 2002, the world was stunned by a leaked police mugshot from the Malibu Police Department. The man in the photo had wild frizzy hair sticking up a wrinkled Hawaiian shirt, a swollen reed face, and a frantic stare. Few could believe that the man who looked like a deranged drifter was actually Nick Nolte, the same man whom People magazine had crowned sexiest man alive just 10 years earlier. But what could possibly have pushed the most desired man in the world to such a devastated state? Looking back at Nolte's appearance during the 1980s and 1990s, he once represented the classic definition of masculine beauty. In films like The Prince of Tides, he possessed a sculpted physique, windswept blonde hair, and a confident half-smile. Yet behind that perfect image of a heartthrob, he quietly escaped the immense pressure of Hollywood through alcohol and GHB, an extremely dangerous liquid drug. Unlike surgical blades that alter a face, instantly stimulants and alcohol destroy appearance slowly and mercilessly. Medical analysis shows that long-term drug abuse disrupts the digestive system and damages tiny blood vessels beneath the skin. His once sharp features became swollen and sagging, often flushed with intense redness. His once fit body gradually gave way to a heavier and more disheveled appearance. Everything reached a breaking point in September 2002. Police stopped Nolte on a highway for driving while completely impaired after taking too much GHB. The mugshot taken that night immediately spread across newspaper front pages, becoming the focus of ridicule and destroying the illusion of a glamorous Hollywood heartthrob. Nick Nolte himself did not deny the humiliating reality he had created. In his memoir, Rebel 2018, he described the moment with painful honesty. That photo went all over the world. My hair was wild. I looked like a lunatic who had just escaped from an asylum. In 1992, People magazine named me the sexiest man alive. And now exactly 10 years later, GHB had turned me into a madman in front of the entire world. That moment became a wake-up call, forcing the actor to voluntarily spend 30 days in a rehabilitation center to detox. Nick Nolte regained sobriety, but the price of a decade lost in hallucination remained etched on a face that had aged far too quickly. His story leaves behind a chilling truth: no matter how radiant beauty may be, it will vanish completely if it is thrown into the chaos of addiction. 6. Lara Flynn Boyle, the muse who imprisoned herself in a chemical prison. In 2013, the Daily Mail released a series of candid street photos that left Hollywood stunned. The woman in the images had a strangely swollen face, lips distorted, as if permanently inflamed, and facial features painfully misaligned. Few could believe that this was Lara Flynn Boyle, the beauty icon once praised by the media as the breath of spring. To understand that shock, we must return to the scenes of the 1990s television masterpiece Twin Peaks. At that time, Lara did not need to display seductive curves. What defined her unique charm were her delicate cheekbones, deep blue eyes, and an ethereal beauty that looked as though it had stepped out of a painting. Even the smallest tilt of her head seemed to melt the camera lens, yet that dazzling glow carried a hidden poison. When she entered her 30s, Lara fell into a severe psychological crisis. Watching fresh young actresses dominate magazine covers, she began to see every sign of aging on her own face as a death sentence for her career. The obsession became so overwhelming that she once confessed a desperate thought: "If I grow old, I will disappear from this world." Instead of accepting the natural passage of time, Lara gambled on filler injections. But what she received was a bitter betrayal from chemicals. Unlike conventional cosmetic procedures that sculpt the face, the silicone she abused did not stay in place. It clumped together and shifted beneath the skin, forming hard and unfamiliar lumps whenever she touched her face. The result was a brutal chain reaction of collapse. From a highly sought-after A-list star, Lara Flynn Boyle became a subject of ridicule on internet forums, even being compared to distorted cartoon characters. Even more painful directors gradually turned away, because her face had completely lost its ability to express subtle emotion. Her desperate attempt to use cosmetic procedures to freeze time ultimately destroyed the brilliant career she once had, turning the former muse into a shadow, hiding from reality within the quiet walls of her own home. 7. Priscilla Presley. The scam of the century and a life sentence beneath industrial silicone. In the early 2000s, whenever Priscilla Presley appeared in public audiences, could not help but feel a sense of sorrow. Instead of the elegance of the Queen of Graceland, the public saw a swollen, overly smooth face with a stiff smile. It was hard to believe that this was once the beauty icon of the 1960s, the woman who stood beside the legendary Elvis Presley during the brightest years of his glory. Being the wife of a superstar was never an easy privilege. Even after Elvis passed away, the crown bearing the Presley name still weighed heavily on her shoulders. The public expected eternal beauty, making her believe that she was not allowed to grow old. That invisible pressure pushed her toward a painfully misguided decision. The 1990s and early 2000s were a time when Hollywood stars feared being seen at cosmetic clinics. The demand for secret beauty treatments created a risky underground market. Through introductions within elite social circles, Priscilla was led to Daniel Serrano, a man who claimed to be a cosmetic doctor from South America. He promised a rejuvenation method without surgery, discreet and immediately effective. Trusting his assurances, she entrusted her face to his injections. The tragedy only surfaced when authorities and journalists began investigating. A 2003 inquiry revealed that Serrano did not possess a valid medical license. Even worse, the substance injected into Priscilla's cheeks was not a medical filler. According to the case file, it was industrial silicone, a material never intended for cosmetic use. Industrial silicone does not dissolve. Once beneath the skin, it forms lumps, attaches tightly to muscle tissue, and alters the structure of the face. The distortion developed slowly but clearly. Only when her appearance became increasingly unfamiliar did Priscilla seek help from leading reconstructive specialists. However, intervention proved extremely complicated. Once silicone penetrates deeply into tissue, it becomes very difficult to remove completely without causing serious damage to nerves and soft facial structures. From that moment on, the consequences were not only cosmetic, but also psychological. The woman who once represented elegance and control over her public image became the subject of constant discussion. The pressure to preserve her glamorous aura turned into a heavy burden of regret. Instead of freezing time, that mistake forced her to live with an altered appearance for many years. Now approaching the age of 80, Priscilla still maintains a calm presence whenever she appears in public. The thick makeup is not only an aesthetic choice, but also a shield against scrutinizing eyes. Her smile may no longer look as natural as before, yet she continues to walk among the crowd with the remaining pride of someone who once lived through a glorious era. 8. Melanie Griffith, the cosmetic disaster. Born from a wife's insecurity.
Every time that I meet with him, he behaves actually very nicely and very natural, but I don't...
Actor Antonio Banderas once openly criticized the coldness of Hollywood. There is a rule that allows men to grow old without scrutiny, but for women, it is incredibly harsh. Ironically, the most painful victim of that rule was his own former wife actress, Melanie Griffith. In 1988, Melanie received an Oscar nomination for the hit film Working Girl. Her rebellious beauty, radiant smile, and large expressive eyes placed her among America's most seductive icons. But the destruction of her appearance did not come from the pressure of film sets. It began with a deep psychological panic inside her marriage. In 1996, she married Antonio Banderas, a man 3 years younger than she was. When Banderas rose to global sex symbol status with the Mask of Zorro living beside one of the most desirable men on the planet, created a psychological curse that suffocated Melanie. She constantly feared aging, feared comparison, and feared being replaced by the younger women surrounding her husband. In order to remain worthy of her partner, Melanie rushed into cosmetic clinics like a moth flying into flames. From the late 1990s onward, she abused Botox injections, overloaded her face with fillers, and underwent facelifts in a desperate attempt to force her appearance back into her 20s. The tragedy deepened when this cycle of cosmetic procedures was accompanied by a battle with painkiller addiction, forcing her to enter rehabilitation centers several times in 2000 and again in 2009. The combination of cosmetic chemicals and medication transformed the once revered beauty into a disaster. Her abnormally swollen lips were cruelly nicknamed trout lips. By the media, her facial muscles became numb, and her skin developed uneven textures that could not be repaired. Even more painful was when she had surgery to remove skin cancer from her nose, yet the public coldly mocked the scar as if it were simply the result of a botched cosmetic procedure. The severe distortion caused directors to turn away, effectively freezing her acting career. Her awakening only came when the relentless mockery cut deeply into her self-respect. In Porter magazine, Melanie painfully admitted, "I didn't realize how bad I looked until people reacted with horror. I had to find a real doctor to remove all that garbage chemical filler from my face." In 2015, the attempt to preserve love with plastic and silicone also came to an end when the marriage collapsed. Melanie Griffith walked out of the courthouse with a bleeding heart and a permanently patched appearance. 9. Edward Furlong, the harsh sentence for humanity's savior. In 1991, Coralco Pictures reportedly spent as much as $6 million just to persuade director James Cameron to agree to make the sequel to the blockbuster Terminator 2. The film immediately earned $500 million, but the greatest attention did not go to the director or the muscular star Arnold. Instead, it focused directly on a 13-year-old boy named Edward Furlong. His gentle, melancholy eyes and delicate artistic features once drove the entire world into a frenzy. But that dazzling spotlight turned out to be a coat far too large for him to wear. Edward once admitted, "I had the whole world in my hands, but no one ever taught me how to hold it properly." By the year 2000, the tragedy began appearing in newspaper headlines. The savior of humanity no longer showed up at film premieres. Instead, his name appeared repeatedly in police records, with at least 5 arrests for driving under the influence and drug possession. Unlike cosmetic surgery that distorts the surface of a face, methamphetamine and heroin attacked Edward from deep within his cells. The most horrifying evidence of this destruction appeared in his teeth. In a shocking interview with the Daily Mail, the actor bravely revealed his bright artificial teeth and confronted the truths. "Drugs destroyed the entire bone structure of my jaw. My teeth rotted and gradually fell out. I had to replace all of them just so I could look in the mirror without being afraid of myself. The consequences did not stop at his appearance. Edward's career was suffocated by his own drug addiction. Director James Cameron, who once considered Edward the soul of the film, had to remove him from Terminator 3 at the last minute because it was impossible to obtain insurance for such an unstable actor. Looking at Edward Furlong today, a gaunt man with pale skin and tired eyes buried under permanent dark circles, people do not just see the marks of time. They see the scars of a psychological battle that ended in defeat. The boy who once played John Connor was not defeated by killer machines, but he ultimately collapsed under the poison he chose himself. The price of fame arriving too early for Edward was a stolen appearance and a career that may never return. 10. Scott Carrot, Top Thompson, A Cruel Joke. Written on the face of a comedian. What is the ultimate weapon of a stand-up comedian? It is not the script, but the flexibility of facial expressions. Yet Scott Thompson, known by the stage name Carrot Top, the comedian whose Las Vegas shows have sold out and generated tens of millions of dollars, ended up injecting chemicals that permanently locked the very tool he depended on for his livelihood. Born with bright red curly hair and a natural charm, Scott nevertheless struggled with deep dissatisfaction about his appearance. He longed for a more masculine, sharply defined look like that of a warrior. He began obsessively training in the gym until his muscles grew massive and veins stood out along his arms. But once his body became powerful, he felt that his playful, quirky face no longer matched it. In an attempt to reshape his face to match his muscular body, Scott began abusing cosmetic procedures. The result was an appearance that startled anyone who saw him. Skin stretched tight and shiny from laser treatments, eyebrows pulled sharply upward and lips swollen and inflamed. The most brutal moment came under the stage lights. When he performed his usual comedic routines and tried to raise his eyebrows or twist his face, the muscles no longer moved. The audience did not laugh. They simply stared uneasily at what looked like a plastic mask trying to tell jokes. Even more bitterly, Scott stubbornly denied the reality in interviews. "People call me a plastic monster, but I just wear a lot of makeup and exercise." That clumsy denial convinced no one. Instead, it revealed the deep fear of a man unwilling to face the appearance he had created himself. 11. Kathleen Turner, the sex symbol, destroyed by the media for a terminal illness. If you fall in Hollywood because of addiction, the media machine might still leave you a path to rehabilitation. But if you fall because of illness, they will bury you. That was the cold rule experienced by the 1980s sex symbol Kathleen Turner. With her sharp beauty, seductive gaze, and husky voice filled with desire and body heat, she once became the burning fantasy of men around the world. But just as she stood at the peak of fame in her early 40s, a devastating medical diagnosis struck. She was suffering from severe rheumatoid arthritis. The disease slowly tortured her with relentless pain. Her joints became so swollen that the actress who once walked proudly across red carpets now had to crawl downstairs and could not even hold a pen. To prevent herself from ending up in a wheelchair, Kathleen had to take high doses of steroids continuously. Yet the very medicine that saved her mobility also destroyed her appearance. Her once sharp face became swollen like a moon face, and her body rapidly gained weight. Instead of sympathy, the ruthless media machine immediately turned against her. Tabloids mocked her as an overweight diva and spread rumors that she had become an alcoholic. Faced with such humiliation, Kathleen chose to remain silent for many years. Only later did she reveal the painful truth. In the public eye, being an alcoholic would actually have been safer. In Hollywood, people are willing to forgive and even hire addicts. But no one wants to cast someone with a mysterious illness who might end up in a wheelchair. The tragedy of Kathleen Turner stands as a harsh reminder of Hollywood's vanity, where a once glorious beauty can quickly become a sacrifice to the cruelty of public judgment. 12. Jocelyn Wildenstein, the $2.5 billion sentence for a flawed portrait. We have already passed through 11 tragedies, yet all of them fade when compared to the final figure on this list. She is not an actress, not a singer, yet Jocelyn Wildenstein possesses one of the most written-about faces in the history of Western media. Jocelyn once said she had no career, but she did possess a natural talent. What was that ability? She confidently declared, "I'm extremely good at decorating." And the greatest tragedy of her life began from that very mindset. She came to see human flesh as nothing more than a piece of furniture waiting to be reshaped. Everything began in 1978 when the middle-class Swiss woman stepped into the billionaire empire of Alec Wildenstein. Alec was a notorious art dealer and had a powerful, almost obsessive fascination with wild big cats. Instead of decorating multi-million-dollar mansions, Jocelyn decided to decorate herself. Only 1 year after the wedding, the first surgical blades began to cut. She did not undergo surgery to look younger. She underwent surgery to become a feline creature. Jocelyn obsessively demanded doctors reconstruct her skull, pull her eyes upward, and inflate her cheekbones in order to please her billionaire husband. She believed that if she transformed herself into the creature he loved most, he would never look away from her. But reality is not a fairy tale. Alec Wildenstein did not see love in those sharply lifted eyes. In an interview with Vanity Fair, he once made a chilling remark about the woman who shared his bed. She thinks she can fix her face like a piece of furniture. Human skin doesn't work that way. Jocelyn's blind devotion was eventually rewarded with the most brutal betrayal. In 1997, she personally caught the husband for whom she had sacrificed her own identity in the arms of a 21-year-old Russian model. She had transformed herself into a beast only to be defeated by a young woman with not a single surgical scar. The divorce that followed shocked the world. Jocelyn walked out of court with an enormous fortune, $2.5 billion in settlement money and $100 million every year for the next 13 years. But the judge delivered one final, deeply ironic legal slap. An unprecedented clause was written into the ruling. She was absolutely forbidden to use even a single dollar of that settlement money for further cosmetic surgery. Looking back at the journey of these 12 figures, a cruel truth emerges. Most of them are women destroyed by cosmetic surgery. This is not merely a personal tragedy. It is evidence of a brutal double standard in Hollywood. While wrinkles on a man's face are often praised as signs of rugged charm on a woman, they are treated like a death sentence. They entered the operating room not out of vanity, but out of fear of being erased from the spotlight. Yet the tragedy is that in trying to preserve the face of the past, they lost the ability to express the present. Frozen smiles and lifeless eyes became the price of a counterfeit ticket to eternal youth. The distortions we see today are, in truth, scars from a psychological battle lost against time. Instead of mocking them, perhaps we should look with empathy. Because behind those altered faces are broken souls still struggling to reconcile with the reflection, staring back at them from the mirror. In the end, beauty is only a temporary kingdom. Identity is the only thing that allows us to stand against the cruelty of time. What do you think about this trade-off? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next shocking stories. Goodbye, and see you next time.